Good morning, and welcome to another edition of Montpelier Connection. We're here at the Statehouse this morning. The 2020 session has started, and so we're going to try and give you some regular reports from the Statehouse. And I'm State Representative Mike Mrowicki from the Windham 4 District of Putney, Dummerston, and Westminster. And today's guest is Representative Sara Coffey from Guilford and Vernon.
And Windham 1.
Windham 1.
Yeah, good morning.
So we are part of the Windham delegation from the Southeast Kingdom, the heart of Vermont, or the entry to Vermont. And we've gotten off to a good start here in the session.
We have. It's been we're entering week 4, and I believe that we're really accomplishing some of the priorities that we set forth to make Vermont more affordable and a stronger economy that works for everyone.
Yeah, we know that in some cases the economy is doing fine, but for a lot of people, it's a struggle. And I'm not complaining myself, but I tell people, between my wife and I, we work 5 jobs, and that's how we make ends meet. And again, I'm not complaining, but I'm just saying we're in the same position a lot of Vermonters are. They're working multiple jobs just to make ends meet, and we want to try and see what we can do to make that better, so in fact we have an economy that works for all. A couple of ways we're trying to do that are a couple of bills that we didn't quite finish at the end of the last session, but we've now passed and they're on their way to the governor. And one of them is, I think especially important to me, is paid family leave. We've also voted on minimum wage, but for me, paid family leave is one of those things that affects people right across the spectrum. Young families with children, people who are more middle-aged who might be taking care of their parents. It can afford them the opportunity to take care of them without feeling like we're going to lose pay. You may even lose your job, and these are pretty heavy lifts for us.
Yeah, and I supported paid family leave because I think it works for the worker and it works for businesses. I hear from a lot of my constituents who run small businesses, and we own a small business, and paid family leave gives us a tool to support our employees. It doesn't cost us, it's not like the expense of health insurance, and it gives us a tool in our toolbox because we really, we have some challenges with keeping and attracting workforce in Vermont, and I see this as a really exciting way for us to attract new workers and families to live in Vermont. We're 18th? Is it the 8th state to adopt this?
I think there's 7 states in the District of Columbia.
Yeah, and I think when I saw what other states were doing, I thought, if we don't do this in Vermont, we're really going to be at a disadvantage. And I think it's a very affordable way to build in this insurance premium that's paid through payroll.
Yeah, it's a small step. It would give people 12 weeks of paid leave away from their job at the most, or people don't have to take that much. But after having a baby, that's not a lot of time.
Right.
And compared to what the rest of the world does, it's a very small step. And out of the 40 most wealthy industrial nations in the world, we are currently the only nation that does not have a nationwide program in this regard. It's time for us to join the rest of the world and put this into effect.
I agree. I'm excited, and I hope that the governor will not veto this. But all indicators are pointing to him vetoing this bill, and I hope that our colleagues will be able to do an override of that veto.
Yeah, likewise. I hope the governor doesn't, because I think it flies in the face of some of the other things he says about trying to attract younger people and young families to Vermont. This is right there in what we're trying to do. This is a very attractive thing. When I talk to people with young children, this is much more important than a lot of the other things we're doing. And for them to even think about having more children, or as I said,
or starting a family.
Yeah. This is an essential thing, and not to make people jealous, but it just shows the perspective. My brother-in-law has a daughter in Canada, and between what she gets from the government program and from her employer, she just went back to work from maternity leave. It lasted 18 months.
Yeah. Well, that bonding time with children, as we know, I remember when I had my kids, I had to make a pretty tough decision. And, you know, I couldn't really, what I was earning in my job, I was going to be turning over to a babysitter. And so I took time off, and it really put my career about 5 years behind, and my earning power. And I really feel like this is one step that we can make. We know it's not perfect, right? We know that this will lay the foundation for, I think, for our working families.
You made a good point there about how it's helpful to women too, and mothers, and it's one of the challenges they face with trying to progress in the workforce, and leads me to look at the minimum wage bill, because what we found is that the majority of people who work minimum wage jobs in Vermont are women.
Absolutely. You know, there's a terrific report. The Vermont Commission on Women is doing some great work, and this is the third year of a report that's come out. You know, because when we invest in women, we are investing in children, and when we look at poverty in our state, we know that that's where we can affect the most change. And so women disproportionately have these minimum wage jobs, and so we know that a single mother cannot, or a single parent cannot afford to live on minimum wage. So this is an important step. It's just an important step in the right direction, and we know we need to do more work to create more better paying jobs in the state.
Yeah, people who work full-time should not have to rely on government benefits just to make ends meet. So it's a win-win if we can keep moving ahead with this. But again, the governor has suggested he's going to veto this, and this hurts people really at the lower end of the economic spectrum. And I would hope we could look for ways we can help, and we think that's what this bill does.
Sure, and it also, you know, puts more dollars into our economy. You know, when people have more money in their pocket, they put more money into our economy, and
the local economy,
and tax and our taxes, which help run government. So I think it is something that I feel is very necessary, and especially us with living on the borders of New Hampshire and Massachusetts, we know that people can make choices about where they live and where they can work, and so we want to keep them in Vermont.
And the interesting thing is, if we raise the minimum wage, it gives us an advantage over New Hampshire. Many people often talk about how New Hampshire has some economic benefits, but New Hampshire's minimum wage is still pegged to the federal minimum wage of $7.25.
Yeah.
Can you imagine trying to live on $7.25 an hour?
No. So that seems absurd in this day and age.
So your committee has been pretty busy.
We have been very busy, and I have to say I love this pace because the work that was done in the off session. I sit on House Corrections and Institutions, and it's both a money committee and a policy committee, and we work on the capital bill and the capital budget adjustment. But at the beginning, top of the session, we wait to dig into the budget after the governor gives his budget address. So in the first 3 weeks of the session, we have time to do our policy work. And we've talked about it before, though what's been going on during the off session is Justice Reinvestment 2. And this is been work that's been done by the council and state governments with our 3 branches of government. Incredible work looking at digging into the data and what is driving our corrections or people into our facilities, but also with the Department of Corrections is supervision of 8,000 people who are out on furlough, parole, and in our facilities. And it is been a very rigorous 5-month process, and they came to us last week and presented a really in-depth recommendations on policy and what we can do to change that. Because we've talked about this before, Mike, but back in 2007, we did Justice Reinvestment 1, and we were able to really divert lower risk, lower...
we bent the curve.
We bent the curve because we were looking at our incarceration, or folks in our facilities, that number go up to 2,500. So we're down to 1,800. We are at 138% capacity now, though, in our facilities, and we are sending people out of state. And we even though it is actually less expensive to house people out of state, our values are that we want people to be here. So it's a pretty in-depth report, and I'm excited to be working. The main push that we're going to be working on with our colleagues in the Senate are to look at statuses and community supervision. And I could certainly get into the weeds, but I think the big recommendation was with furlough statuses that we are finding that between 60 and 70% of folks are reincarcerated because of a lack on technical violations, most often because of a lack of adequate housing. And that to me is really a profound statement. I think what's happening is as the report stated, is that people coming out or going into our facilities have more complex needs, both mental health and substance abuse disorders. So coming out, we need to really readapt the kind of housing that we have. Currently we have a lot of sober housing and housing that doesn't allow for example, women with children. And so it's a real deep look at how can we work within the Agency of Human Services to better develop and reevaluate some of the housing and put money into that, not just invest in these upfront costs that will help bring these numbers down. So it's complex, and that on top of I just have to comment, we have there's a big upset within the Department of Corrections right now because of a story that came out in 7 Days in early December around sexual harassment in the women's prison. And so there's a new commissioner, Jim Baker, who is as an interim commissioner. He has a very strong reputation for turning around the police department in Rutland a number of years ago. There's an investigation going on. So, what we're hearing about is also there's a lot of stress going on within our facilities. It's a hard place to work, as you can imagine.
And they're very understaffed.
And they're really understaffed and it required overtime. And so I'm encouraged by what I'm hearing from the commissioner coming in and how we can do better recruitment and retention. And, people spend a lot of time at these facilities, and we need them to be better places to work and better conditions for everyone. So we're looking and trying to shift the culture within corrections. So I could go on, as you can tell. It's a topic that I'm pretty passionate about.
Yeah. Well, it's something a lot of people are interested in back home and across the state, because I think our sense of justice is that we want to make sure that all people are treated in a way that helps them be better. And right now our system has a lot of holes in it, and especially in regards to substance abuse and in relation to mental health, to trauma. What we know now is the research shows that the background of people having trauma, or I should say untreated trauma, shows up in behaviors that are antisocial and wind up getting people locked up. And so, in our facilities, we are needing to really have new kinds of training for our staff in there because of trauma. And I have to say, what we've been hearing for the last 3 weeks, a lot about the training, and also, a lot about a tough subject, the Prison Rape Elimination Act, which was passed in 2003. It's a federal law, and it took them 9 years to develop the rules. And I'm really encouraged by the way that the training, but we need to do more. And I think that DOC staff know that we need to do more, and we need to give them, with justice reinvestment too, we see how we are underfunding corrections, and we need to, as tough as it is with our budget, if we don't make this investment, we lose out. And really great, terrific analysis about making this investment, we can save millions of dollars, and it will take within 5 years. But we have to, like most things, we have to make the upfront investment and also invest in our community supports for corrections, because we know that people for being treated for mental health issues, we have greater success outside of corrections, actually, as you know from your work. It's an area, like several others, that state government really needs to start making investments in people, or more and better investments in people, because if we want to keep moving forward, we can't keep cutting and not making those investments. As anyone who's made any successful investments knows, you have to spend some money to make some.
Yep.
And I think in this regard, we're talking about the forgotten people, the people who don't get much attention. And from my perspective, we all benefit as a society when we can make accommodations for those. And it helps all of us. It adds to the quality of life, and there's carryover there.
And just think about all those people, if they can be more productively involved in our communities, and they're contributors to our communities, their children will be more successful. We can disrupt this school to prison pipeline.
Yeah.
And it's, I see a continuum. I say this over and over to a lot of my constituents. I'm really pleased that our Department of Corrections is within the Agency of Human Services. And so that means that we can, look at the whole picture.
Yeah.
And as Justice Reinvestment, the Council on State Governments commented, though, there are some silos within that, and we don't need to spend more money in certain areas. It's just making sure information is shared across agencies.
Yeah.
So this is something that improves our society, saves money, and also just makes it a better place to live. These folks are coming back into our communities. So.
Yeah. Certainly we're looking at a lot of other things, and one of the things, as I started out by saying, we're concerned about helping our economy work for all Vermonters. And Vermont is really a lot of small businesses, and what we're trying to do is keep our finger on the pulse to see what would work for them. And you have an idea now that you're trying to...
Yeah. Well, I come into the legislature from the arts field, and one of the things that I have seen through my work before entering the legislature is in New England and nationally, this conversation about the creative economy as an engine. And in 2002, about a year ago, a report came out from the National Governors Association, which was about rural prosperity through the arts. And it is some really incredible examples of what's going on in other states. And Vermont hasn't actually done a lot to support the creative economy. And in a way, we're in a really exciting position to do more. So by tapping into, and this is not, when I say the creative economy, it's a really broad, we often think about the creative economy as our nonprofit arts organizations, which are an important part of our creative economy, but it's also the folks who are making work that's, for example, Vermont made handcrafted furniture that is sent to people all over the country. One of my constituents, the Vermont Wood Studio in Vernon, does this. They have a kind of national market, and it's because we have a strong Vermont brand that stands for quality and craftsmanship. And really, what we need, so this idea that when we did our rural economy bus tour in the fall, we heard about the success of the Working Lands program, which was a program that invested in agriculture. It was in response to the need, a shifting economy in our and needing to support our working landscape and to diversify it. And we also heard about the strong impact that the arts and recreation sectors have, and they're often interconnected. So with a colleague of mine, Representative Zott, we came up with a piece of legislation that we introduced last week for a Working Hands program, which is modeled on the Working Lands program, which is a way to tap in some small resources to help our businesses, our creative businesses and entrepreneurs to expand, grow jobs, create, through technical assistance and some investments to expand. So I'm excited about the legislation. We had 18 legislators sign on, and it's going to be introduced into House Commerce and Economic Development, and the vice chair there has been supportive of the idea. So, I think it gives us another tool in our toolbox, and it also addresses the question of how do we attract young people to our state? I hear this all the time. We're lucky that we live in the greater Brattleboro and Putney, area, because what's attractive to young people, I hear this, it's like, they might not be artists, but also there's a scene, there's a vibrancy, and that's what, you know, our small rural communities can
Yeah.
offer, you know,
Yeah.
whether it's in our downtowns or our studio tours or
Yeah.
just this vibrancy. It's what, you know, young people with, whether they're single or looking to start a family here, you know, or have small kids, you know, it's a really part of a lifestyle, and it's an equalizer. It brings people together in a
Okay.
way, in a really powerful way. So I could go again. I'm passionate about this, but I'm excited, and you know, and I'm hoping that we can get this across the finish
Yeah.
line. You know, we have some good support with the Vermont Creative Network for
Yeah.
this bill, and folks within the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. So, you know, I know that we'll work with colleagues to improve these ideas, but you know, hoping that it can be an economy that works for all of us. You know, so.
It's a great start, and it's actually very creative
Mhm.
in looking at how to boost the creative economy. So thanks for your work
Yeah.
on that, and thanks for everything. And I want to editorialize a little bit here that Sarah's just been a great addition to our
Oh.
caucus here. She's been a very productive member who works hard, and it's great to have you on board.
Well, it's great to be part of a really wonderful delegation that works together.
Yeah.
You know, it's a pleasure to work with you.
We do work together well, and I think that was really illustrated recently when the challenges at the Brattleboro retreat
Absolutely.
are facing came to the surface, and this delegation really came together to support them. We recognize there's some challenges that they have to face on their part to change, but we didn't think the state understood how valuable the retreat was to the whole state and to our area. And in working together, I think we impressed upon the state the need to continue to support the retreat and its place in the providing mental health services and in the local economy.
Absolutely, and so I think it became visible when the governor mentioned it in his State of the State address.
Yeah.
And now, however, the work is not over because it doesn't, contrary to what the governor said, those dollars have not showed up in his recommended budget to support the retreat. So it's because that will show up in the capital bill, which comes through my committee, and also in the big bill. And so we will be needing to advocate and continue to advocate. And I feel confident that through the work of our delegation that we can do that.
You bet, yeah. So thanks a lot.
Thanks. It's great talking with you, Mike, as always.
And early in the morning here as we get ready to start our day.
Yeah, and I just want to say I appreciate, it's really an honor to be up here, under this golden dome, which you can see in this illustration behind us, but it's really an honor to be up here doing the people's work. So.
Yeah, indeed it is, and to be able to try and do something to give back to our communities this way is a privilege that we certainly don't take for granted. And to that end, we want to make sure we're here, but we're ready to listen to what's going on for you. And sometimes things come up during the session. For instance, if somebody's having trouble with heating assistance or some other thing that's happening in town and you don't know where to go, email us, give us a call. The information, our contact information is on the legislative website.
Yes, please be in touch.
Yep. So thanks to the people back in Brattleboro at BCTV for helping bring our work. Take care.